Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see here on our channel, our website, or social media. Reach out to me directly, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a famous first from 2018, the first ever two-tone rose and steel GMT-Master II. This is the 126711 CH&R rose gold and 904L stainless steel. Still 40 millimeters in diameter. The watch is remarkably only 12 millimeters thick. Two ways to measure it. You can measure it lug to lug, in which case it's 48 millimeters, or you can measure the solid end links, which project outward and increase the span to 50.8 millimeters. The spacing between the lugs is still 20 millimeters, so you can still use your old Everest straps if you have one for the previous model. On the wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference. My wrist wears this watch well. It's flat, surprisingly flat. It's actually thinner than a Daytona, which kind of took me aback. The timepiece is substantial, as there's a little bit of gold mixed in, but Rolex cases, bracelets, and clasps are always so solid that steel Rolex watches these days feel like gold from any other brand. Add gold and you really have something special. I can recommend this for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference, maybe even 13 and a half if your wrist is more flat and oval than round. Taking a look at the bracelet, polished centers, red gold. This is Rolex Ever Rose. Just as Rolex uses a special steel, anti-corrosive 904L, it's more anti-corrosive than standard 316. Rolex also uses a special gold. Now this is a rose gold that has a high percentage of platinum in it, so there's a lot of copper to give it that redness, but also platinum to prevent it from fading over time, which is a traditional weakness of other red gold alloys. Rolex has its own foundry where it makes its own cases, bracelets, clasps, and even its own metal alloys. Now the clasp here, as you can see, has a red gold straight through. There's a lift lock system with a beak and a hook internally, so you can see how that latch is shut. You can't actually just pull it open. You do have to lift the latch. So there are two different locks. The second one is the clamshell, and then there's a kerf built in. I like that attention to detail so you can get your nail in there. This is a flagship piece for Rolex, so naturally you have a polished clasp internal, and then there's the Easy Link system, which is 5 millimeters in or out. You clamp it down, you pop it up. It's the equivalent of adding or removing one sizable link, and if you want to remove the sizable links, they're fixed with screws here. There are also a couple of divots drilled inside the clasp. I don't know how well you can see that in the light, but there are a few divots drilled inside the clasp that allow you to change the anchoring point using a strap tool, so you can actually adjust where the bracelet enters the clasp, and that'll allow you to size it a third different way. Roll into the case slank. It's the super case. You know it well. It's been a feature of the GMT-Master II since 2005. Here in stainless steel, you can see the sides are sheer, high polished. The lugs are big, beefy, and squared off, and they're the primary reason this 40 millimeter watch looks more like a 42 on the wrist. Now the crown, as well as the bezel, located like a crown atop this watch. Red gold. You'll also note that red gold has been used for the deposits inside the bezel. The bezel itself is black and brown. Yes, it's a root beer style, but what's more impressive is that the indices and the numerals represent red gold deposit inside the ceramic. So the ceramic is useful for its scratch resistance, and then the red gold adds richness. The dial is gloss black, which means it's lustrous, glossy, and looks a little bit like wet paint. You have the gilt style red gold print GMT-Master II. All the hands, as you can see, are red gold to match. And then we have a second time zone. 24 hours is that second time zone, and I'm able to move the local hour hand independently. You can see I can jump the date forward or backwards as I travel. I also have the ability to make that change while the watch continues to tick. Now if I pull the crown out all the way, I activate hacking seconds, and you can see that local hour hand moves at twice the speed of the 24-hour hand. So that 24-hour hand is the time zone where you are not. It moves in 24-hour circuits, so you know, for example, whether you're looking at the first half of the day or the second half of the day. Now also important is the fact that if you set that 24-hour hand to Greenwich Mean Time, you check the GMT offset of your port or airport of destination, and then you offset, for example, plus or minus 3 hours to find the local time at your destination. So temporarily, if one of your time zones is set to Greenwich Mean Time, you can read 3 time zones on this watch. Screw down case back, trip lock crown. Fun fact, when you see the large dot at the center on a trip lock, that means it's gold. Platinum would be the inverse of that. So the watch has the caliber 3285, 31 jewels, automatic winding, bidirectional. It dispenses with the old jeweled staff rotor for a bearing system, like you see in the Daytona, makes the rotor more shock resistant. It has a 70-hour power reserve thanks to a new Liga-etched Chronergy escapement that's sort of Rolex's answer to the Omega coaxial. So power reserve goes from 48 to 70 in this generation of the watch. It beats away at 4 hertz or 8 beats per second, and it's tough because it has a full balance bridge with a free sprung index and all the adjustment to the timing is done using the microstella variable inertia nuts on the balance. So with the full bridge and the free sprung index, it's a very shock resistant movement. It's adjusted in 5 positions, and it's a COSC certified chronometer, and Rolex then takes that chronometer certified bear movement, puts it in the case, and adjusts it to no worse than +2 -2 seconds per day. That's the basis for their superlative chronometer nomenclature at 6 o'clock on the dial. Now it also includes an overcoil hairspring made by hand with a Breguet overcoil profile, so that the hairspring breathes concentrically in any position and the watch will keep equally good time in any position. Finally, that hairspring is a niobium zirconium blue oxidized anti-magnetic alloy, so this is a very resilient watch, shock resistant, anti-magnetic, and water resistant to 100 meters. Finally, on this generation of the Rolex caliber, you do get the Paraflex shock protection springs as Rolex finally moves to its in-house setup over its long-term standby KIF. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And we're back with the GMT-Master II. Note all 4 hands are fully loomed.